Hello, this is Chuck Solomon, and welcome to the Candidate Experience Podcast, where we focus on the job candidate journey from apply to onboard and the space in between. Let's get started. You care about the candidate experience, but have you ever wondered exactly how to bring your company to that next level and offer a world-class experience to your candidates? It's not easy. Fortunately, Candidate.fyi can help. Their solution guides candidates through your hiring journey, enhancing transparency and communication at every touch point. You'll also gain valuable insights on what's working and what's not with your hiring process. Best of all, it integrates directly with your ATS. Head on over to Candidate.fyi and see how to transform your company's candidate experience today. Welcome to the Voice of the Candidate episode, where I'll be exploring ways to improve the candidate experience from the job seeker's perspective. You'll want to listen carefully to some of the common mistakes that companies are still making in 2019 and suggestions on how to correct them. If you like what you're hearing on this podcast, please subscribe wherever you enjoy podcasts and do share with others. Thanks for listening, and here's the show. Hey everyone, thanks for listening. This episode is going to be a little bit different, and I'll tell you the reason why in a second. Typically, I interview one guest expert each episode, and today is going to be just me talking about VOC, or the voice of the candidate. Next week, I'll be returning to that guest interview format. So I'm really thankful for all the feedback that I get from listeners, and some feedback that I've heard from a couple of listeners is that they want to hear directly from job seekers. And that's what I'll cover in this episode. They also want to hear from more practitioners, that is, those folks that are working in the trenches of HR or hiring managers. They want to hear their stories and join me as a guest. So I have actually two practitioners that I'll be interviewing tomorrow, and I'll air those episodes over the next few weeks. And so thanks for the feedback first off, and I also have a small ask that if you know of a practitioner, a hiring manager, HR manager, recruiting manager, etc., or someone involved in employer branding at a company, and that you'd recommend that they come on my podcast, please go ahead and make those suggestions, or even better yet, have them go to my website, thecx.xyz, and suggest that they listen to a couple of episodes, so that way they can see if they're interested. And if interested, please go ahead and recommend them. I'd happy to talk with them. I talk with all my guests before we actually talk, just to make sure we know what topics we're going to handle in that episode and stuff. So it's me asking the questions, but my guests are prepared. So moving on to the topic today, voice of the candidate. One of the things that I've been wanting to do is hear from job candidates themselves and have them as guests. I really wanted to give them a voice. Obviously, this has not happened. Every week I talk with job seekers from across the country, and I listen to their stories, and unfortunately the stories they tell typically aren't favorable. And this is actually one of the main reasons why I started this podcast a little over a month ago, to help shed some light on the topic. So recruiting leaders and hiring managers can learn from mistakes of others, or perhaps learn from their own mistakes, and really truly embrace the need to improve the candidate experience and why that's important. So to me, any company that isn't ensuring their candidate journey is more favorable and more positive, more like a customer journey that your sales and marketing team is using to acquire more customers, then they're going to be lapped by those companies that are making it a priority. If you listen to my guests, many provide useful tips on how to improve the candidate experience, and this isn't just for the larger Fortune 500 companies that have big budgets. Those smaller and mid-sized companies without big budgets can certainly manage to do a lot if they choose to. And with the current market conditions being what they are, with unemployment being so low and pretty close to full employment, I'm not sure why you wouldn't want to do everything you can, especially if you're a B2C company, to make sure that your candidate experience that all your job applicants are having is top notch and the best it can be. So I've talked to current job seekers about interviewing them on this show, and the more I thought about it and the more I talked to these job seekers about having them come on the show, is that I didn't think that it would be that helpful to them, because first and foremost, their goal is first to acquire a new position, and I really don't want to do any harm. And as I reflect back on these conversations with job seekers, I said, really, if I air an interview with you, you might come off sounding as like a complainer or a whiner, and we certainly don't want that. And I wouldn't want to actually jeopardize someone's, future job opportunities by airing their complaints, even if they did go ahead and disguise, the company and things like that. I think really what hiring managers are looking for is not a complainer. They're looking for problem solvers. So I have a few job seekers that we've agreed that after they secure their new role, then we'll talk about having them come and interview. And as if you've listened to any of my episodes in the past, I'm not about shaming or blaming or naming names of companies. It's really more about trying to provide constructive feedback. So until then, you've got me. And what I've done is sort of taken what I've heard from job seekers collectively, and we'll share their stories today, talking a bit about their pain, the pain that exists still in 2019 for many job seekers in the hiring journey. But also, I heard some really great suggestions as to how, from the candidate's voice or their perspective, how candidates are making suggestions and offering some feedback and tips to companies on how companies can improve the candidate journey. So there are still problems that persist. Obviously, when I've talked to job seekers, it comes in all shapes and sizes, from small companies, startups, to Fortune 500. There's still problems that persist in this hiring journey. I'll distill these down into four main categories, and then share what job seekers are suggesting as to how to improve upon these challenges. So the four main categories were: 1, time; 2, effort; 3, planning; and 4, communications. Starting with number 1, the main issue nearly all of the job seekers I talked to talked about is time. That it just takes too much time in order to get through the candidate process, and that includes everything from the beginning all the way through the end. In fact, I just read a statistic recently that over the last 10 years that the time to hire has actually doubled from a decade ago to now. So not sure quite why that's happening. One would expect that the time to hire would actually be decreasing, but in fact it has increased over the last decade. Perhaps a topic for another episode that I can get a guest expert talk about why that is. But it takes too much time for candidates to go through your hiring process. Number two is effort. It's sort of tied in with time, but in many instances, I heard that job seekers thought that it just required too much effort. The application process itself was just too lengthy and too onerous. Oftentimes I heard that the pre-employment assessments were also too time-consuming and onerous. I did hear from a couple of job seekers that said they didn't necessarily mind doing those online assessments. What they did mind is that they got no feedback on the results of it. And, that's something that they wish they could have. They didn't mind doing the assessment, but if they were going to spend 30 minutes, 40 minutes, even an hour, I heard from some, that they actually wanted to hear what the results were. Something to think about. And also, effort-wise, it seemed like, and I heard this from several job candidates, that the applicant tracking systems seem to be more designed to keep people out and not attract them. So that was heard. I heard that from several people. So just getting through the proverbial black hole of the applicant tracking system takes a lot of effort. The next category was planning, or it was more lack of planning. It seemed, and I heard this from probably about half the people I talked to, is that a lot of times there is no clear plan or process for the recruiting process. Where I don't think it needs to be that way, but it is. And we're talking, actually, I heard from a few candidates that were actually interviewing with large Fortune 500 companies where they would ask, so the candidates were asking, so what is the interview journey going to look like? And the companies couldn't actually tell them what the process was going to be. It seemed, the candidates would say, it really seemed like they were making up the process as they went along, which one would expect that a large, especially a Fortune 500 company, that would have a well planned out process, and they could actually communicate that to prospective job candidates as well. So, which leads me into the final category of issues that still persist is communications. Many of the folks I talk to, they're saying that there's really a lack of timely communications, and also failing to close the loop. A few of my guests in previous episodes have actually mentioned this specifically in closing the communications loop, that job candidates are saying that, if they're no longer being considered, then they want to know, when that, as soon as that happens. They don't want to wait around for weeks. And in some instances, I've heard of job candidates waiting months in order to hear, and some never hearing about the status of their application with a company. So communications, I think, is a real key that sort of cuts across everything here. So anyways, those were the four sort of main categories of problem areas: time, effort, planning or lack of planning, and communications or the lack thereof. So I always want to go ahead and switch into what are the more positive things. And the job seekers that I talk to actually have some really good suggestions as to how to improve the journey or how their experience would be bettered if these things had happened. And those really revolve into three areas: communications, feedback, and then investing in your brand. So let me talk about each of those in turn. Communications, job seekers, want you to communicate your process. This actually, one of the job seekers I talked to said they thought that this should really exist on a company's career portal. That is, they should communicate up front. This is what the typical candidate journey looks like, whether it be review your resume, we're going to do a phone interview, we're going to bring you in for an in-person interview, and this is the process, and as well as how long it typically takes. The time was always a factor in there. Candidates want to know what time it is. Also, I heard often from job seekers that once the interviewing process begins, that they really want to be communicated with on what that process looks like, the number of interviews, with whom those interviews will be, approximately how long a period of time will this take. They just want to know upfront how long that's going to be. I talked to a job seeker the other week, and he was interviewing with a large Fortune 500 company, and I said, how long has the process gone? And he said, it's been close to 3 months, and the end is not near either. So, which sort of brings me to sort of a side point on interviewing. This gentleman had gone through, I think, he was on his 8th round of interviews. And I'll just add that interviewing does a great job of determining how well a person interviews, but it may or may not predict how well a person will perform in the actual job. I actually hope to talk more about this because there are companies out there that are devising ways to do what I would call a job tryout, if you will. So I want to talk about these job tryouts that other companies are trying to devise to do just a different and better way of evaluating talent beyond simply just interviewing. So the other suggestion that I've gotten from job seekers is feedback. Job seekers want feedback. Any feedback is helpful. So they'd love it if companies would go beyond the standard ATS rejection note and offer something that's more concrete, especially to those candidates that were actually interviewed. You've actually invested some time into getting to know the candidate, and from the candidate's perspective, they've also invested their time as well. And that candidates are looking for feedback. A lot of job seekers aren't interviewing all the time. They often go years before interviewing, and any feedback that can be offered that would be helpful and constructive, job seekers would love to get that feedback. And the third and final suggestion that I've gotten from job seekers is investing in your brand. Really let candidates know what's in it for them. Treat candidates more like prospective customers. That job seekers, actually I talked to several job seekers that mentioned that they now avoid certain brands that they used to be customers of, and it's all because of the bad experience they had directly or the bad candidate experience they heard about from others that they're close to. So none of that's very good. So there is so much more available in the hiring space, and more things on the horizon to come. So my suggestion is You can invest in your brand. You don't need a big budget for this. And so demo new things, try out new approaches is not a bad idea. So those were the 3 main suggestions that I got from job seekers, and I appreciate those job seekers for sharing. And again, I would love to have some of you on as guests once you actually secure that new job opportunity, and to hear more voices of the candidate directly from the candidate once you've secured the new job. So. In closing, I think all too often companies make the hiring journey about themselves, and it really should be about the candidate and what's in it for them. I'll get back to airing my interviews with guest experts next Friday. And again, I've got 2 hiring practitioners that I have lined up that'll be coming out this coming Friday and the following Friday. So please listen in, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the Candidate Experience Podcast. You can reach out to us via our website, thecx.xyz. That's thecx.xyz.